So tonight's lesson is lesson 71, which is fractions, decimals, and percents. This is going to be kind of like your first lesson with changing fractions, decimals, and percents. We'll do many lessons. This is kind of a very short first intro lesson, and we're really talking about the denominator of fractions, the denominator when we are dealing with decimals, and the denominator when we're dealing with percents. So, it first says, fractions, decimals, and percents are three ways to name parts of a whole. So when we're talking about fractions and decimals and percents, we're not talking about having a whole pie. We're talking about parts of it. So for the first example here, we have a circle and it's cut in half. And it looks like 1 over 2 pieces, 1/2 as a fraction. It looks like 5/10 or 1/2 as a decimal, and 50% shaded as a percent. Alright, go ahead and look at that 1/2, 5/10, and 50%. You do have to write these down. So if you want to pause the video to write it, you can. The lesson's not going to be very long, but there is quite a bit to write today. So the first one, it shows 1/2. The denominator of a fraction can be any number other than 0 and is expressed in the fraction. So the number and the denominator can be any number but 0. Now when we're talking about the denominator of a decimal, we're coming down here. The denominator of a decimal number is a number from the sequence 10, 100, and 1,000. And you can remember that because our decimal numbers are called tenths, hundredths, thousandths. The denominator is indicated by the number of digits to the right of the decimal point. So if we are dealing with one number to the right of the decimal point, we would put this number over 10, 5 over 10. And it should kind of come naturally to you because this is called 5/10. So the denominator is already in the name of our fraction. Let's see if I can. If we had, let's say, this is 55. We read the number as 55 hundredths. So we would put 55 over 100. So when we say the denominator is indicated by the number of digits to the right of the decimal point, we're talking about how many, this is our decimal point, how many places to the right are we going? Are we in the tenths? So we'd have a 10 as our denominator. Are we in the hundredths? So we'd have 100 as our denominator. Are we in the thousandths? So we would have 1,000 as our denominator. Now, percents are pretty easy. 50%. The denominator of a percent is always 100 and indicated by the word percent or the percent sign. So we have a percent, the denominator, and we're taking a percent and we're putting it as a fraction. The denominator will always be 100. Percents are always out of 100. If you think of it, if you take a test and I pass it back to you and you get 100%, that means you have one whole. Everything's correct. If I pass it back and you have a 50%, that means 1/2 or 50 out of 100 are correct, meaning it's 100 is going to be your denominator. So what I want you to do right now is try these two numbers, okay? And I want you to put them into fractions. So you're really thinking about what is my denominator here. Go ahead and pause the video to either write down all of this information or to try them yourself. Alright, and as I read this number, 5/10, there's only one number to the right of the decimal point, so I know that my denominator is going to be 10 and my numerator is 5. 5/10. Now if I had another number, it would have been out of 100. And another number after that, 1,000. 1,000th would be out of 1,000. Alright, 50%. Well, I know from looking up here, all my percents are always out of 100. There's a possibility of 100. And what do I have? I have 50. Alright. And the next example. Now, we've actually been doing this a lot in class, you just haven't noticed. When we play our spoons game, we have to match 10% to 1/10 to a fraction 1/10. So we have to match a fraction, a decimal, and a percent. We've been doing this already. But what we're going to do here is we're going to take 10% and 1/10, and we want to turn them into fractions. So go ahead and do that for me. Alright, we're talking about percents here, so we're out of 100, and I have 10, so I have 10 out of 100. And I come over here, 1/10, I only have one number to the right of my decimal point, so my denominator is going to be 10, and my numerator is going to be 1. Alright, and for your lesson practice, you have 4 problems. You need to tell me which ones are greater than, less than, or equal to. Go ahead and pause so you can write them down.